Welcome to the day after talking Duck sports. And man, oh man, what a game. We had number 2 Ohio State versus number 3 Oregon coming to Autzen Stadium, where good teams come to die. And Ohio State goes down to Oregon in this game. And just one thing about this real quick, let me look at that stadium packed. All right, so let's talk about that real quick. So Oregon is a 54,000 seat stadium, or definitely I think it's one of the, it might be the smallest in the Big Ten now, but they packed 60,129 people in this for a record, beating out the other Michigan game when Michigan came to town, where it was just hella loud. It was 127.2 unofficial decibels, which is basically the sound of a jet plane taking off. You saw Ohio State fans with their fingers in their ears, and it was just raucous. They caused 4 false starts and 1 delay a game, and the fans were just amazing. Good to see. I wish I could still be going to those games. I still have season tickets that I get to my friends out there. But man, oh man, what a game. Oregon pulls off the victory, 32-31. And what I thought was a kind of mistake-filled game. I thought the mistakes in this game were the reason for the close score and the reason for the loss, not necessarily the other team making the plays to win the game, if that makes sense. Yes, they scored. They made those plays to win the game. But I thought the mistakes were the two tails of this game. You had Harmon, who played an amazing game with Jordan Birch being out. He really stepped up and tried to fill that gap that Jordan Birch is always filling there. And I thought he did an amazing game. He literally ran up, met the running back in the first quarter, met the running back in the backfield, and didn't even tackle him. He just grabbed the ball and pulled the ball away and got Oregon the possession. An amazing, outstanding play by a defensive lineman, and just pure determination to take that ball away. It wasn't like he hit it and it fell out. He literally grabbed the ball in the running back's arms and just flat took it away from him. But when you're, pushing 300 pounds against a 200-pound guy, sometimes I guess you could do that. I don't know. I've never seen that before. An amazing individual effort, amazing individual play, and I thought that play really gained Oregon some momentum, because as this game unfolds, you have Ohio State getting the rushing TD, or you have Ohio State getting the rushing TD, and then you have Oregon having to punt the ball. And then Ohio State's driving, and Harmon just flat takes the ball and gives Oregon the ball back to come down and get that score. Now, there was a mishap on the extra point, and I don't fault the holder for just throwing it and hoping something happens. But I don't know if it might have been just smarter just to lay down and take the one last point, because Ohio State ran that ball back a long way. And if they had scored that 2 points, that could have been the difference in this game. But that said, after the first quarter, the score is 7-6. In the second quarter, you have another rushing touchdown, a 1-yarder, and they for Ohio State, they go up, and then you have Evan Stewart catching a insane pass, and he gets the touchdown, and they go for 2. They don't get it, and then Oregon comes down again. Oregon kicks the field goal, and then Ohio State gets a passing touchdown. And then Tez Johnson gets a 48-yard touchdown. And between Stewart and Johnson, those two speedsters were really getting behind Ohio State's defense. And I think Ohio State had only given up one play over 30 yards all season. And with this, Oregon gets 4 plays over 30 yards, 3 passes and a run. And just amazing. So going into the half, Oregon has a 1-point lead at the half, 22-21. Third quarter comes out. The only score is by Ohio State and a passing TD. And then in the fourth quarter, you have a beautiful 27-yard rushing play by Dylan Gabriel. Gets a massive block by Terrence Ferguson, and they go in for the score. Ohio State gets a field goal, taking the lead. And then with 1:51 left to go in the game, Sappington gets a field goal and puts Oregon up by 1. And then some clock time mismanagement and a offensive pass interference call gives Oregon the win. Now, let's talk about this a little bit. So, that's not what we want. All right, so the final score 32-31 Oregon. But I thought Oregon left. Okay, let's just say, for the sake of argument, is that every time you're in the red zone for Oregon, you should come away with 3 points. And let's just say that we shouldn't be missing field goals. Oregon left 9 points on the field by either going for it on 4th down and not getting it, or just flat, making a mistake or something. And I thought there were some plays there where the coach should have made a different decision, but Dan Lanning's super aggressive, so it's kind of hard to fault him at that. But let's just take a look at these team stats here. First down, 18 to Ohio State's 22. Third down efficiency, Oregon was 6 of 14, and Ohio State was 4 of 12. And I think this shows here with these two offenses, when they're not doing that good on 3rd down and they're pushing 4th down, is that you have two good defenses really playing hard and really being the force of this game. Oregon held Ohio State to their lowest rushing record, and Oregon surpasses Ohio State's most yards given on the ground. Passing yards are pretty even at 341 apiece. Yards per game, Oregon is almost 500 yards, and Ohio State's is just right behind them. I think this is 30-yard difference. Oregon had 1 sack for 9 yards without Jordan Burch, and man, I think they put their hands on the quarterback that could have been sacked probably 5 times, where their quarterback, he's like 6'4", 2 something, big guy. And those little just hand tackles, you're not going to bring that guy down. That guy is just too big for that. But there were 4 or 5 times with Oregon's defense in the backfield touching the quarterback, that maybe the speed of Jordan Burch on the other side, maybe they could have got another sack or 2. It's hard to tell what impact Jordan Burch would have had on the game. I guarantee he would have had an impact, but I just wonder what that would have looked like. I really wish that he could have played in this game. This would have been the perfect opportunity for him and Oregon to really show what they're capable of. But Oregon, without their best defensive player, holds Ohio State to their lowest rushing yards of the season. And that's super impressive. Oregon gives up 0 sacks for the 2nd game in a row. The 3rd game in a row. 3rd game in a row, which is a far cry from where we started in the season, where we had 4 or 5 sacks right off the bat, a couple multi-sack games there. So Oregon against Ohio State, excluding Oregon, is the best defense so far that I've watched and I've seen. Ohio State is ranked as the number 1 defense in the league right now. Oregon, I don't know. Like, maybe that's Oregon now, because Oregon's defense looked really good. Did they give up a few plays? Sure, but you're playing against Ohio State. That's going to happen. You're not going to blank Ohio State. You're not going to hold Ohio State down. But when you hold Ohio State to under 31 points and you get 32 points, that's everything that your defense had to do and everything your offense had to do. So, I mean, there's just, I don't know what else to say about the Oregon defense other than they showed up huge for this game, and they did everything they had to do to give the offense a chance to win, which the offense did. And that's the other thing, is I still think the offense gave up some plays, gave up some points on the board. I think Oregon should have had at the minimum another 6 points, but the coach is being aggressive, and against Ohio State, so, field goals sometimes just aren't going to cut it, but coming away with no points really hurts on some of those. So let's look down a little further. Interceptions thrown. Well, okay, here's a contention here, because the referee should have stopped that second play. That second play was a Bassa interception, and they didn't stop the play. Chip Kelly knew. He ran the play real quick. They got the play off. Then it couldn't be reviewed. But I thought the referees made a whole bunch of mistakes in this game on both sides of the ball. I thought they weren't calling a lot of pass interference and stuff in the first half. I thought there was some holdings that they weren't calling. I saw a couple on Oregon. I saw a couple on Ohio State. I saw some pass interference on Ohio State that they didn't call that seemed blatantly obvious. Even to the announcers were talking about it. The announcers were talking about how the referees should have blown this dead and reviewed it because it was such a huge thing. So I wonder how many of those referees were former Pac-12 referees, and they should just get thrown the hell out. If you were a former Pac-12 referee, you shouldn't have a college job. You need to go back to high school. But enough said about that. So punting, both of them had 3 punts. Penalty yards, another huge difference. Oregon had 3 penalties for 25 yards, and one of those penalties I still think was questionable after rewatching the game today and rewatching that play over and over and over again. They said that Tez Johnson was called for being covered up and then went downfield. Tez Johnson was not on the field at all. And when you look at the play, you have the tight end, you have another tight end, and then you have a wide receiver. All 3 of those went out, and to the best of my... Okay, now I'm not a coach. The X's and O's are a little fuzzy when you start talking about that. But what I remember about that play is you can have both tight ends release, and the wide receiver on the outside was stepped back, so he wasn't covered. So that penalty shouldn't have existed, and it should have been a pass interference on Ohio State. But whatever, those 2 penalties were canceled out. I don't know if that even counts in this particular stat or not, but that was one that was there. Now, Ohio State, like I said, there were 4 false starts and a delay of game. That's huge. Those were huge. And as a fan, as a former person that always went to the games in Austin Stadium, you always think those delay of games or pass or holding call or not hold, but false start. Sorry. I'm just excited. So the 4 false starts and the delay of game is, as a fan and you're in the stands, you always think that you helped get those for your team. And I thought that was the case. It was so hard to hear for Ohio State. Any movement on the defensive line caused those guys to jump. Fumbles. There were, it says 2 and they lost 1. I can't. Oh, the bad snap to the Ohio State. Well, actually with a good snap, the Ohio State quarterback, it kind of just deflected off his hands and he just jumped on it. I think that's the other thing that they called the fumble. Time of possession, Ohio State has 33 minutes and 9 seconds time possession to Oregon's 26 minutes. But as we know with these 2 teams, they score so fast, it's really not about that. So let's see. Jordan James is the first 100-yard rusher this season versus Ohio State. This is the most points scored against Ohio State this year. And this is Oregon's second consecutive win over Ohio State. They went to the shoe a couple years ago and beat Ohio State at Ohio State. Ohio State comes out here for the return trip, now part of the Big Ten, and Oregon gets the victory again. Let's look at some of these stats here. Now, for a quarterback that has been passing for 80%, Dylan Gabriel goes 23 of 34, 341 yards, average of 10 and 2 TDs. Will Howard does 28 of 35, 326, 9.3 average, and 2 TDs. Both quarterbacks played really, really well until, the end for Ohio State. And Dylan Gabriel, for some reason, coming out of the third quarter, Oregon's offense just doesn't do well for whatever reason that is. So Oregon holds all Ohio State rushers under 100 yards. They had 10 for 87 for 8.7 yard average. Long was 53, but that was there wasn't a lot of big explosion plays for Ohio State. I thought Oregon managed those fairly well. Comparatively, Jordan James has 23 carries for 115 yards, 5-yard average, 1 TD, long of 25. Dylan Gabriel has the 27. Noah Whittington is just not, I don't know what his deal is, but 3 carries, 7 yards, longest was 4. And then Kenny Sadiq, 1 yard. Jeremiah Smith, the freshman, gets his 100 yards and his TD. He had a long of 38. Ibuka had 26. Scott had a 25-yarder. Quentin Judican had 21, 32. But look at this. 1 TD, no TDs the rest of the way. That's the huge. They were just keeping those guys in front of them. 9 catches for 100 yards, 11 average. 10 catches for 93 yards, 9.3 average. 3 catches for 46 yards, 15 average. 2 catches for 38, 19. I mean, their receivers were catching balls. But their running game wasn't up to the same standard, and the Oregon defense just kept everything in front of them. Didn't get those really long pass plays for touchdowns. But you're not going to hold Ohio State down. You're just not. So it is what it is for there, and you just have to slow them down and hope your offense can keep up, which they did. Evan Stewart, 7 receptions for a massive 149 yards. 21.3 average, 1 TD, 69-yard long. Tez Johnson, 7 for 75, 10.7 average, 1 TD for 48. Terrence Ferguson had 4 catches, 62 yards, 15.5. Now, I thought Terrence Ferguson played an okay game. I thought Terrence Ferguson had a couple uncharacteristic drops that you don't normally see from him, but he had some massive blocks that sprung some of those out there. And so overall, I mean, he played great. Just had a couple drops, but I think some of those were just thrown a little too hard by Dylan Gabriel, and it just kind of bounced off his hands and stuff. But overall, still a good game. Trayshawn Holden has 1 catch for 32 yards, and then right after immediately gets ejected. So let's talk about that for a minute. So Trayshawn Holden is the senior. He transfers from Alabama. He comes in, and he's a major player in Oregon's wide receiver game. And he catches a 32-yard pass. They're kind of down there on the side. There were some hands in the face during the play, and then as they were coming off, the Ohio State player says something to Trayshawn Holden. Nobody knows what that is. Trayshawn Holden decides that he's going to retaliate and spit in his face with the referee like 3 yards away, or like 3 feet away, and they call a unsportsmanlike conduct, and they eject him from the game. So that put Oregon out of I think there was a second goal or something like that, and that put Oregon out, and they had to get a field goal instead of a touchdown, which was a big penalty. It was a big loss, and everything like that. But how do you punish this guy? For me, for me, honestly, I think the ejection and the grief that he's going to get from the rest of his team about, hurting the team and whatever Dan Lanning's going to do to him in practice, that probably won't be public. I don't think he needs to be, suspended for any game or held out for any games or anything like that. I think this was a heat of the moment thing. I also think it was a retaliatory thing. I think he definitely is going to learn his lesson of not being able to play the rest of a massive game that Oregon gets the win of. He then becomes not a part of this win. And I think that alone is enough for him to learn that lesson. I don't think on his senior season a continued suspension or anything is warranted for that. Nobody got hurt. It wasn't an off the field transgression. It wasn't like you're Georgia and he goes out and gets arrested and all that other stuff. So I think not being able to play in the rest of this game, I think the grief he'll get from the other teammates, the punishment he'll get from Dan Lanning, and then they'll build him back up and bring him back up because he's a major part of this team, and I think that's probably punishment enough for him. Justice Lowe comes out in place of Trajan Holden, played a great game. Gets one reception for 9 yards, but did some blocking there at the end. I thought he played pretty well. Next man up in that case. Noah Whittington and Jordan James both had a couple catches here for 341 yards receiving, 155 yards rushing, which are, I think, both season highs against Ohio State. No fumbles there. And, Mateo, I can't say his last name. I'm just going to butcher Ulungale. Played a fantastic game. Bossa was all over the place. His speed was very apparent side to side and stopping the run. That guy is just super fast. The secondary played outstanding, keeping everything in front of them. And Derek Harmon had the game. I thought he was, easily the defensive player of the game just by how disruptive he was. Without Jordan Burchin, he knew he had to step up, and he did all that. And wow. So let's look at the standings here. You got Indiana at 3-0, 6-0 overall. You got the Oregon Ducks 3-0, 6-0 overall. You got Penn State Nittany Lions 3-0 and 6-0 overall. You got 3 undefeated Big Ten teams still left. Indiana, let's take a look at their schedule. I'm not sure what they got coming up. Let's see. They got Nebraska, Washington, Michigan State, Michigan, and man, their second half of that's rough. You got back-to-back Michigan, Ohio State. So Indiana is going to get tested here. I think this is the telltale game for them, Nebraska. I think we'll really learn if they're for real. And if they can, do what they've been doing, putting up 40 points or more against Nebraska and holding Nebraska down, like these games may get a lot better for them. But they don't play Penn State. They don't play Oregon. So there's that. Let's see. Let's look at Penn State's schedule here. Penn State goes to Wisconsin, and Wisconsin all of a sudden found their offense. So don't sleep on this game. Wisconsin very well may be able to take Penn State down, with Penn State looking forward to this Ohio State game. Penn State has to take care of business against Wisconsin to get here, but you'll never know. And then, of course, they get Ohio State at Penn State. Typically, Ohio State has just beaten Penn State at home, but you never know. Maybe Oregon printed a blueprint. You never know what's going to happen in college football. But Penn State's got to be where Penn State has to concentrate on Wisconsin. Wisconsin has found an offense, and they put up what they put up. 42 points against Rutgers, and Rutgers had been very good. So, there's that. Now let's take a look at Oregon's remaining schedule here. We got at Purdue. Purdue scored a bunch of points, but they have no defense. I think Oregon, I don't think they have a letdown on this game, but they still need to be where it's still a Big Ten opponent. But I think Dan Lanning has Oregon super focused. It's Oregon against Oregon, and I think Dan Lanning gets it done in Purdue. They have Illinois. They got Michigan, at Michigan, Maryland, Wisconsin again, at Wisconsin. In November, that game could be snowy and cold, and that could be a big factor in this game. It may be a run game because you're just maybe not able to pass. And then they have the last game, Washington at home, which now doesn't seem to be as big a deal as it did early in the year. But I wanted to get this out there. I was just too excited. I didn't want to wait for the rankings to come out and kind of see where they were. I was just really excited to talk about this game and get this out there. Thank you so much for joining me. Who do you think was the offensive player of the game and the defensive player in the game? And what was Oregon's biggest weakness in this game? Go ahead and put those in the comments. Let me know what you think. With that, we're out of here. Thanks for joining me. Much love all. We'll see you next time.